We always knew that this race would quite possibly end with a runoff.
This is a historic race, and clearly it's not over yet.
Two candidates left in the race to become Little Rock's next mayor.
You want to give back to the city that's given unto you.
I want to serve everybody, north, south, east, and west.
Tonight, Frank Scott Jr. and Baker Kurrus face off live in their only one-on-one debate before election night.
New directions with real results, and I've got a proven track record.
It's time for Little Rock to change, and change for the better.
It's the race for the rock. Scott, Kurrus. The debate starts now. From the combined newsrooms of KARK4 and FOX16, this is the Runoff for the Rock, a Little Rock mayoral debate. Now to your moderators, FOX16's Donna Terrell and KARK4's Ashley Katz.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome inside the Victory Building studios in downtown Little Rock. This is the first and only televised debate featuring the two candidates in the runoff to become Little Rock's next mayor.
Early voting started today. Election day now 1 week away, and tonight we are joined by the two men hoping to lead Arkansas's capital city. First, Frank Scott Jr. He's a vice president at First Security Bank and an associate pastor at Greater Second Baptist Church. Mr. Scott, thank you for joining us this evening.
And his opponent, Baker Kurrus. He's an attorney and business consultant and the former Little Rock School District Superintendent. Mr. Kurrus, we want to thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Donna.
And there are some simple ground rules we need to get to. First, we'll be posing questions to one candidate. He'll have 60 seconds to respond. Then we'll allow the other candidate to respond to the same question. Earlier today, we tossed a coin to decide who will get the last word in closing statements. Mr. Scott won that toss. He will go last. And while there will not be a 60-second, there will be 60-second closing statements. There will be no opening statements tonight. So with that, let's get right to it. Donna, you have the first question.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, this race was brought into the national spotlight a couple of weeks ago when the Little Rock Fraternal Order of Police posted a photo of Mr. Scott. He was shaking hands with a man who is suing LRPD over no-knock warrants. Now, that man was later accused of hitting a deputy in Cross County with his car while fleeing a scheduled court date. Mr. Kurrus, the FOP has endorsed you and they mentioned your name in that post, but then they deleted it once you condemned it. But what would you say? What would the message be to people who actually saw that post and they might be influenced by it? They may decide to vote a certain way because they read the post.
Well, everybody has to decide how they're going to vote, and they have to look at the totality of circumstances. I certainly had nothing to do with the post, and when I found out about it, I did what I always do. I called the people directly involved. I didn't get on Facebook. I don't live my life on Facebook. But I called the people directly involved, and I said it's divisive, and it's damaging to our city. Didn't hurt me, and I would certainly do nothing to hurt another candidate. But I did think it was divisive, and I kindly asked them to please pull it down, and that's exactly what they did. And I think that was the right thing to do. We've had a great campaign so far. We're trying to unify this city. Everybody knows we're going to live here when this is over, and that's what I was trying to do. And the FOP gave their endorsement to me. The other candidates asked for it. Mr. Scott asked for it, and so did the others. They gave it to me. With that said, I didn't know anything else to do other than to kindly ask them to take it down, which they did, and I thought that was the better approach.
Okay, all right, thank you. Follow up to that, Mr. Scott, you called the post divisive, smear tactic, and you said that you are ready to begin the process of turning the page if you are elected. So I'm wondering, what does turning the page look like, and are you satisfied with the answer that you just heard?
Well, turning the page looks like our entire vision and mission that we've been sharing this entire campaign, and that's that it's time to unify the city of Little Rock, move us from being disconnected to connected, and truly focus on jobs growth. Now, a few weeks ago, the Little Rock Fraternal Order of Police did engage in a very divisive smear tactic. It's our understanding that our opponent did not He did disavow the particular statement, but did not reject the endorsement. That's not the type of Little Rock we all want to see in the current, present, and the future. We need a Little Rock that's truly going to be focused on unifying this city and focusing on jobs growth. And we don't need anything of the past. And I really would like for my opponent to please reject the endorsement. He's right. We both looked after for the endorsement ourselves, but that was at a point in time when it was very civil, and we did not engage in no divisive tactics, and we did not know that Little Rock FOP would engage in something like that. So I would like for my opponent to ask to reject his own endorsement from the Little Rock FOP, so we don't have that type of past moving towards our future.
Ashley.
And speaking of unity, we're going to continue to talk about this because on election night, we did get a window to see exactly how Little Rock is feeling going into this race. We want to show you a map and let you know a little bit about how the votes came out by precinct. Mr. Scott dominated South and Southwest Little Rock. Kurrus won West Little Rock. Third place finisher Warwick Saban fared well in areas like the Heights, Soma, and Hillcrest. So for all the talk that we're hearing tonight about unifying this city, that map shows some pretty clear divides there. What do you need to do now to make up ground on that map when you look at it, and what's way that you're expanding that right now? Let's start with you, Mr. Scott.
Again, our entire mission and vision throughout September 12th of 2017, when we started our exploratory committee, to June 2nd, 2018, when we started our official campaign, was to truly unify this city and focus on jobs growth. We've been doing that from day one. We're very happy by the 25,000 people who voted for us, where we got about 38% of the vote. I think it's good to note that we achieved votes on more than 20% in every district, in every area of this town, and shows that someone who wakes up every morning in Southwest Little Rock and goes to Ranch Drive, I already understand that there are disconnections, and we have to move from being disconnected to connected in our city. And that's the reason why my internal why has always been about unifying this city. And we're going to continue to use the same message and vision that we've always done, and make certain that we're reaching out to all voters, Mr. Saban's voters, Mr. Tolliver's voters, Mr. Swart's voters, and even Mr. Kurrus's voters.
All right, and Mr. Kurrus, what can you do to maybe connect with those neighborhoods that sided with Saban originally?
Well, I'm doing the same thing, actually, I've done since 1980. I didn't start running for mayor until June the 1st, which is the date that the ordinance required. But I've been serving this community, all of this community, since I got here in 1980. It's 38 years of service. I sat on the school board for 12 years. I guess I went to 400 school board meetings. I've been to every school. When I was school superintendent, I went into every building. I went to where the needs were the greatest, and a lot of those needs were in South and Southwest. I don't have to reach out. I've already been reaching out. I continue to reach out, and I will continue to reach out. We have to unify our city. This mistrust that Mr. Scott talks about and wants me to reject some sort of a FOP endorsement, that just foments that same level of mistrust. We've got to come together, we've got to be unified, and we've got to work hard to do that. And I'm committed to that and always have been. Whether I'm mayor or not, I'll be committed to that same thing.
Okay, we're going to switch gears just a little bit here. Whichever one of you wins, you will play a key role in selecting the next police chief. Kenton Buckner, he left earlier this month, as you know. He did a final interview right here on these stations, and he didn't hold back expressing his frustration with racial tension he saw on the job as well as in the city. So we want to take a minute and let you listen to what he had to say.
I understand that that is a part of our community, a part of the fabric of who we are, both past and present. And that, for me, was very, very frustrating at times because it's not the way that I would prefer to view everything through that lens, but it's certainly a strong piece of that undercurrent in our community.
Okay, so we'll start now with Mr. Kurrus, and hearing the former chief talk openly about racial tension, it's obvious that this is something that cannot be fixed overnight. So if you're elected, what qualifications are you looking for in a chief that can alleviate some of that divisiveness?
Well, the first thing I'll do is I'll take over that task of finding a new police chief from the city manager. The CEO of this city is the mayor. That's what our ordinance requires, and that's what our ordinance says, and I will be in charge of that process. What I'll do to make that process valid and to build community support is go straight to our board of directors, the policy-making body in our city, and ask them, what are you looking for? You're the policymakers. You're elected from all wards in our city. What are you looking for in a police chief? Then I'll go straight to the community and do the same thing with meetings in every single ward, not to find the police chief, but to ask the people, who are you looking for? What do we need in a police chief who can bring us together? And then we as a community have to come together, Donna, and find out if we can find the person we're looking for, whether that's a person in our department now or somebody in a national search. The community is going to drive that process, not Baker, not the city manager, but the community, because that's what you have to do to build unity. You don't sell the police chief to people. You involve them in the process so they understand what we're looking for and help us find it.
Okay. All right. And the same question to you, but I want to change it just a little bit because you've talked about being black in Little Rock as it relates to encounters with law enforcement. Does that factor into your role in helping to pick a chief? And what kind of questions would you actually ask?
Well, definitely, first and foremost, the comment about being black in Little Rock has a lot to do to the no-knock raid warrants that happened with Mr. Roderick Talley, that where there was a Washington Post expose where it was very disappointing that happened, that it was unconstitutional from a Fourth Amendment standpoint. And so I wanted to share my lived experience. As it relates to the next police chief, as your next mayor, what I would like to do is make certain that next police chief has proven leadership as it relates to community policing. We want to make certain that the police chief wants to focus on the community and make certain that understands cultural competency, de-escalation tactics, and implicit bias. But not only that, to make certain that we understand the growing Latino community and as well as the growing LGBTQIA community and different types of crime that's happening against them as well. We want to make certain that we unify the city and focus on jobs growth, but to do all of that, you have to secure your communities.
And let's continue the conversation about public safety, because as far as the day-to-day issue goes, that seems to be what voters are most interested in this race. Last year, we saw one of the worst crime rates that we had seen in a decade. Also, we've seen a decrease this year, which is good news. But in terms of policing, we know both of you can agree that we need a fully staffed LRPD. We need more community policing. What will your focus be as mayor to prevent violent crime in Little Rock? And Mr. Scott, let's begin with you and maybe your specific idea beyond the community policing and a fully staffed department.
I think it's good to understand first and foremost that the crime that we're experiencing right now, it's not a disease. What it is us not addressing the root cause of the symptoms, which is poverty and education. And so we have to make certain that we address those issues. And that goes back to our message of unifying the city and focusing on jobs growth. But at frankscottjr.com, we have a very detailed public safety plan where we talk about increasing our police force from 593 to 700 over the next 4 years. It'll be reflected in our current budget, so it'll increase about $15 million, mainly because we understand both factually and perception-wise that safety is an issue. And if safety is an issue, it has to be reflected in our budget without raising taxes. And so, again, it has to be focused on community policing, understand cultural competency, de-escalation tactics, and understanding implicit biases. And that's what's going to help unify our city, focus on jobs growth, and understand that safety will make certain that we address those issues of poverty and education as well.
All right, and under a Kurrus administration, you heard him address some of the budgetary concerns of all of this. Is there going to be room in the budget for public safety? How will you address public safety?
Well, I'll prioritize it, Ashley. We haven't been fully staffed for the last 2 years in our police department, and we balanced our budget with so-called vacancy savings. We're facing $8 to $10 million worth of budget cuts in the balance of this year based on my budget analysis. And I've been sort of joked about because I'm a budget wonk, but I'm telling you, our budget's in real trouble. There isn't $15 million. And you go to frankscott.com, you won't find a plan to come up with that money. That's not possible right now. It's not feasible. And whether it's a good idea or not, I'm not sure. I don't think we need 100 more police officers in our city. I think we need to be fully staffed. We need to be fully trained. We have to have police officers on the ground. Instead of having 207 police officers on patrol, I'd like to understand in a department of 754 people why we don't have more officers on the patrol. What's going to hold us back is if we don't fully staff, if we don't have adequate equipment, which we don't have now, that's where we fail. And then we can't make excuses for crime. It's unacceptable, and we have to own it as a community.
May I have a comment, please?
Sure.
Well, first I want to make certain that we understand, my opponent has to understand that we have to have a Little Rock that's aspirational, a Little Rock that has a vision. And I firmly believe that if safety is truly an issue for our city, we can find the money. That's the reason why, as my time as a senior advisor to Governor Mike Beebe, I understood how you can make different things work from a state budget because we help run the entire state budget. As a banker, I understand how to move things around if you want to really address true priorities. And that being said, we need to have a performance audit in our city right now so we can see if we're getting the bang for the buck for all resources and projects. That being said, we could increase our safety issues as it relates to resources moving forward because it is a priority for our city, and that's what's going to help unify our city.
And before we move on, I would like to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, that's nice to say, but you got to show us. if you're going to spend $15 million, tell us where it's coming from. It's that simple. That's how budgets work. I've worked with budgets. I cut $22 million out of a $315 million school district budget. Nobody knew I cut it. But you have to show us where the money is. It's just not there. In fact, we're going to have to cut $8 million to $10 million this year. Now we're going to add $15 million for a police program and another 10 or 11 for a reading program. You got to come up with the money. We spend, if we want to do this, it's fine, but let's figure out where the money is before we promise things.
And there is a point where we will talk more about budget issues, but let's move on to this. Both of you have talked about making changes, and while the city will have a new mayor next year, you're going to be dealing with a board where 6 incumbents were just re-elected. You have a city manager who's been on the job for the last 16 years. How will you work with these officials to implement your agenda, and what is your message to make them want to get on board? And maybe even a better question is, what if they refuse to get on board? What will you do? Mr. Kurrus?
Well, the CEO of the city is the mayor. We have a strong mayor form of government that's in our ordinances but isn't in operation. On January the 1st, when I take office, I'm going to change the way we operate, Donna.
How do you do that?
I'll tell you how I'm going to do it, exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to meet with every board member and ask them to set policy. That's what boards do. As the mayor, I will chair the board, but I'll also be the CEO. It's a dual role. So first, I'm going to get the board to set policy. Tell us what you want in a police chief. Tell us what cuts you're going to make if you want to add, if you want to have golf, or if you want to have a homeless problem. Give us those policies, and then tell me, as the CEO, how I can help you. And I've got experience doing that. This won't be a first-time thing for me. I've run a big school district. I've run big companies. I know how to be a CEO. And then you go straight to those board members, and then you work with every one of them. You establish personal relationships. You serve them as CEO, which is what CEOs do. And you build trust and relationships. I did that in the school district. I can do it for the city.
Okay, and Mr. Scott, you heard this won't be the first time he's done something like this. So he's really talking about you here. How will you work with the board of directors and a city manager who's been around for 16 years? And what if they refuse to get on board with your agenda?
Well, I think it's good to know that my lived experience as an associate pastor at Greater Second Baptist Church, as a leading bank executive at First Security Bank, but not only that, being a highway commissioner at the Arkansas State Highway Commission, I've learned that you always have to build relationships first. You have to build trust, and then you have to execute and do exactly what you say you're going to do. And so from all of those lived experiences, I think I can be able to make certain that we lead our city and unifying our city, focusing on jobs growth. And I have a very clear plan that I'll help issue that plan and that vision, that policy agenda, and move forward with the city board of directors.
What is that clear plan?
The clear plan is, it goes at frankscottjr.com. We have an opportunity agenda that focuses on youth and education. We have a public safety agenda. We have a jobs agenda. As well as that, we have an inclusion agenda. It's very well laid out, but it starts first with building relationships, building trust, and executing, so we truly can unify this city and focus on jobs growth. And that's what you'll have in the next mayor at Frank Scott Jr. But also, we have to have real change. And real change is to make certain that we move from this current bifurcated system to a true mayor-council form of government.
Okay, thank you.
Well, here we are. We're at the end of year 4 of state control of the Little Rock School District. It's led to a lot of growing concern from the parents, the teachers, stakeholders. I'm curious what, as mayor, you all can do to restore that balance while we wait for the state to return control of LRSD here locally. Mr. Kurrus, a lot of citizens here in Little Rock know you as superintendent, but how can you still be influential in your role as the next mayor?
Well, the mayor's got some things that they really can do to build communities. Good communities make good schools. Healthy communities make for healthy schools. I'll be the first mayor that's ever been a superintendent of schools, who ever sat for 12 years on a school board, whoever had kids in schools for 20 straight years. I understand the school district. I know how it works. I know how it's funded. And I also know how to make things happen at the state capitol, which is what has to happen. We need our school district back. We need it to be community controlled. I was elected 3 times to that school board. I understand what community control can do for a school district, and it can happen. I built new schools in this town with the help of some wonderful people at LRSD. I know where they are, and I know how to influence neighborhood growth, to build enrollments in schools. And the good news is, if I get this mayor's job, they can't send me home. I'll have 4 years to do it, and I think I can make a major impact by doing the things that I understand need to be done in our school district. Cooperate with Mike Poore. I've got a great working relationship with him. Help build trust and relationships with the school board when we get our school district back.
All right, and Mr. Scott, it's clear you want Little Rock School District back in local control. You're a product of this school district, a proud product. What kind of relationships do you already have in the works that will solidify your role as the next mayor under that transition back to local control?
Well, first I want to make certain that I show some differences right here today. Mr. Kurrus often talks about how he was removed from being a superintendent, but we have to make certain that we understand why he was originally hired. It's been publicly known for quite some time that he was against local control at the time and could not work with the existing school board, and that's actually how he got hired. But as we move forward, yes, I'm a true product of this great Little Rock School District, hailed to the red, white, and blue at Parkview Arts and Science Magnet. And one of the things that we talk about, what can a mayor do? We have to understand that the mayor understands that the students are our most precious assets, as well as those teachers. And as we move forward, again, we want to have an opportunity agenda to focus on education. If there are summer reading academy of $11 million, that again is a priority for our city to focus on education, so we can stop individuals who are deciding to leave our city right now because the school district is not what they think it should be. And so what we want to do as the next mayor is fund a program and be a strategic investor as we move forward.
And your reaction, Mr. Kurrus, to your argument that you were against local control, what do you say to that?
That's nonsense. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I never said that, and nobody that knows me would ever say that. That's nonsense. It's complete fabrication. I don't know where you came up with that, but there's no proof of that, and absolutely not true.
It's actually in the press.
No, it's not in the press. It's not true. It's not true at all. And I don't know why you said that, but it's fine. I'm for local control. I sat on the board for 3 terms, 400 meetings. I don't know that I ever missed a meeting, and I never saw anybody else that ran for mayor at any school board meeting, ever. And I'm a proud product of Little Rock Schools. I started here when I was in the first grade. So this nonsense about local control is ridiculous, but it's just simply not true.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap you on that. You know, we were talking just a little while ago about budget issues, so let's get back to that and just go a little deeper. Mr. Kurrus, you talked about running companies and budgets. You just sat here a minute ago and you talked about being the CEO of the city. When it comes in terms of wanting to pay for things in Little Rock, you've talked about funding firefighters, first responders, and hospitals. I guess I'm wondering, where would the cuts come from? You said when you were at LRSD, you cut $15 million and no one knew where you cut. We want to know, where would you cut in the city of Little Rock?
Well, the first thing is going to be in the administrative office. I'm going to merge the office of mayor with the office of the city manager. We won't have 2 chiefs of staff. We won't have a large central staff. I did that at the school district. That's where you show people not only that you're willing to make cuts, but you're willing to be a part of that budget cutting process. I won't travel much. I may not travel at all. I won't be getting on an airplane in January to go to a mayor's meeting. When I get this job, I'm going to go to work every single day. And there are not any easy budget cuts here, Donna. There are not any easy budget cuts, and there's practically no extra money, but we've got to understand where we spend every single dollar and be certain that we get value for every single dollar. I'm not sure we do that now. I see $180 oil changes in our fleet services department. Give me a little time to dig into that. But I don't have the job yet. But I can tell you this, I know where I can cut in the administrative office and save hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. That's where I'll start. I'll make those sacrifices. I won't drive a city car. I won't do any of that stuff. While we're cutting the budget, we'll all suffer a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Scott, same question to you, but in addition to that, you talked about a chief education officer liaison between City Hall and local schools. I guess I'm wondering about that. Where will the money, first of all, where will the money come from? And you said you want to add 25 more police officers each year.
Yes. And so again, we understand that safety and education are huge deterrents to the city of Little Rock right now. Many people are deciding to leave Little Rock because of safety and a perceived lack of education. And so those are 2 priorities that have to be a part of our budget, because if it means something to our budget, it'll be in our budget. And so yes, over the next 4 years, I want to increase our police force from 593 to 700, which is about 25 police officers over the next 4 years, because safety is a priority.
Where will the money come from?
From the $265 million budget that we have right now. And if that means we have to cut to make certain that we're going to produce safety in our city, we will do it. It's a tough decision that you have to make.
Okay. Do you have a response to that?
Well, it's just the same old stuff. It's easy to talk about adding money to a budget, but it's hard to come up with the money. The secret to the whole thing is to make the pie bigger, Donna. That's my plan. Not just to fight about what we've got, but to make the pie bigger, and we can talk about that maybe when you ask me another question.
Your thoughts?
Well, again, if your budget reflects your priorities. And safety is going to be a priority in Frank Scott Jr. administration. Education is going to be a priority, and jobs are going to be a priority. And everything that we've laid out at frankscottjr.com, it will be funded within the existing $265 million. Again, that's the reason why we call for a true performance audit, where we see if we're getting the most bang for our buck for the existing programs that we're paying for right now. It's very issue that you can do right now. I've done it when I worked for Governor Mike Beebe. I've done it with the State Highway Commission. It's very doable.
And with that, we have to say that this part of the debate has concluded, but we want to give you each the opportunity to make a closing statement and talk to the voter one last time. You'll each have 60 seconds. We'll begin with Mr. Kurrus.
Okay, thank you very much. I've enjoyed being with you all. Thank you, Mr. Scott. It's a pleasure always. We've been together 24 times. I love this town. I grew up in this town when I was a little boy. I came back here as quick as I could. And when I did, I wanted to serve. That's what I want to do. I'm not a traditional politician. I wasn't a traditional school superintendent. But I'm a person who wants to serve and wants to give back. That's why I'm doing this. I've raised my family here. I've got 3 kids who live here. I've got 2 grandkids who live here. I want this to be a city of opportunity for everyone. I learned as a kid from my parents, from my mother, who was never college educated but was brilliant, who was a member of the Women's Emergency Committee to reopen our schools, that we have an obligation to give back, and we have an obligation to reach out and help those that need help. We have an obligation to be diverse and inclusive, and we have to reach out to everyone in our community across the board. That's what I've done as a human being since 1980. That's what I'll do if I get this job. I'll work hard every day. You won't have to worry where I'll be. I'll be out in our community every day working hard for the people to make this a town that's inclusive and diverse and a kind of place that's prosperous for everyone. That's what I want to do.
Okay.
I need your vote.
Mr. Scott, you won the coin toss, so you'll get the final word tonight.
Yes, thank you to everyone and all the viewers today. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I am Little Rock. Born, raised, and still reside in Southwest Little Rock. I'm a product of Little Rock Public Schools. I'm an associate pastor. I'm a banker. Former senior advisor to Governor Mike Beebe and a former state highway commissioner. And the reason why I want to run for mayor of my hometown, because it's time to unify our city. It's time for real change in our city. It's time to focus on jobs growth. It's time to secure our neighborhoods. But not only that, it's time to engage our youth to make certain that we do not lose them to the streets, to make certain they reach their full potential. And so if you're looking for someone that's truly going to change this city, unify this city, focus on jobs growth, and make certain that we can bring back our family, friends, and loved ones that have decided to leave, to come back home and understand they have something to come back home to, it's time to vote for Frank Scott Jr. And we will lead this new Little Rock, a unified Little Rock, into the future. Thank you so much, and I sincerely ask for your vote.
We want to thank both of you for your time tonight, and we wish both of you well in this election.
Thank you so much.
And early voting continues tomorrow through Friday and again Monday at 5 locations citywide. Election Day, mark your calendars, it's next Tuesday. Polls close at 7:30 that evening, so we do hope you will get out and vote. We certainly do hope you learned something here tonight. Good night to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.